Hola chicos, en este video vamos a hablar de verbos de cambio radical, that is stem change verbs in the preterite tense. Up till this point we've only known stem change verbs to exist in the present tense, and we've talked about the boot, and we know that there's verbs that change from an E to IE and an O to UE, a U to UE, and up to this point I've told you that this doesn't exist in the preterite tense, and it's true, the boot doesn't exist. However, there are some verbs that are stem changes in the preterite tense. And the first category that we're going to talk about is what we call I to Y, verbs that somehow change what should be an I to a Y. So let's take a look at it. So let's first review our preterite tense endings. I think that would be worthwhile for those of you guys who are having issues with it. We know that our endings for the regular preterite tense are a, aste, o, amos, astes, aron. Remember that these endings correspond with your subject pronouns. They have nothing to do with gender, whether it's a guy or a girl. People have been asking that question. Nothing to do with that. These are just your endings to determine who performed what action. Those are your ARs. Here are your ERs and IRs. E, iste, io, imos, istes, and ieron. And really, for the stuff that we're doing now, with the stem change verbs, they're only going to affect these ERs and IRs. So you're not even going to see any of these ARs. Remember the ARs we use with the kar, gar, zar verbs? All those obviously end in an AR, kar, gar, and zar. Well, these ones are going to be all ER and IR verbs. And really the form that we're going to be most concerned with is the third person, singular, and plural. So we've sort of narrowed down our what's being used here and what's being discussed. Okay, bien. So let's continue. So really what makes these become stem changes are what are called vowel combinations. And if you look at some of these vowel combinations, we have the AE, we have the EE, the OI, and the UI. These cause problems. So in Spanish, when you have a verb, and if we play a little, Wheel of Fortune here, or Hangman, we can fill in these words. And a word that has this AE in it is the verb caer. And that verb is pronounced like that, caer. It's not caer, it's caer. There's two syllables to it. You can probably think of a word that goes here, the verb leer. It's not leer like in English, it's leer, two syllables. Then we have the verb oír, to hear, which would have an accent on this I, and this is pronounced oír, two syllables. Then we have a longer one, you can figure it out, construir, which means to construct or to build. This one has construir, three syllables. But the important thing to understand is that these vowels, the E, the AE, the EE, the OI, and the UI are separated into two separate syllables. Okay? As far as what these mean, you guys should know this means to fall, this means to read, this means once again to hear, this one causes people problems, and this one means to construct. And we'll see an entire list of these verbs on one of the other slides. Okay, so these are the vowel combinations that cause changes. So you really want to take down these as examples, AE, EE, OI, and UI. Okay, so what do they do? Well, here's a list of verbs. Let's actually make this so that you don't see all of them at once, because that can be a little bit overwhelming. So let's take a look at, well, I guess we got to look at three. Let's take a look at, only focus on this one right now, right, caer. So what happens with caer in the preterite tense? We've talked about our endings. Look at the first forms, caí, caíste, cayó, caímos, caístes, cayeron. Look at this form here. Third person, singular, and plural, we have this Y in here. Okay? So what happens with this Y? Why does this Y go in here? Well, because if we take this and we conjugate it how it's supposed to be conjugated, we're going to have something like, instead of cayó, we're going to have, I'll do it up here, cayó. That's three syllables in that, cayó. It's too much. So the I is replaced with the Y. There's always a reason for it. Take a look at the verb leer. Same thing. Do we want to have here, for this example, leyeron? Too much. We replace the I with the Y. So it's leyó, leyeron. Pronunciation. Cayó, cayeron, leyó, leyeron. Moving over here to the verb oír, which means, once again, to hear. We have regular forms here and here, but down here we have this Y in here, because we don't want it to be pronounced oyó. Look, it just even looks weird. It's pronounced oyó, so it's spelled like it's pronounced with the Y. Now, another thing to notice on these verbs, I said really only the third person, down here, the third person is irregular, but if you look very carefully at this, you see accents where accents normally don't go. Here, here, and here, 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 and here, 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 and here. And this is because we need to have a separation between the A and the I, the E and the I, and the O and the I. If we don't have an accent on this I, this is now pronounced kaiste instead of kaiste, because the A and the I make this sound, I. We want you to pronounce kaiste. So we need accents on these I's now. This is not regular. This is something that's different from the regular preterite tense endings. Same thing with leer. If you have the EI sound together, this is pronounced something like A, right? A. We want it EI. So we have here, we have leíste, leímos, leíste. So we have to have an accent on all the I's now. And that's important. Same thing with the verb oír. This is pronounced, I guess it would be oí. We need an I here. We need an accent on the I here. Oíste, oímos, oístes. So there's actually a couple little irregular things about these stem changes. All right, the final verb combination, the vowel combination is the UI. Now the UI, you can see that we have a Y in here as well. That's what's similar to them. In between these AEs, EEs, and OIs and UIs, we're going to have a Y in the third person singular and plural. But look, no accent here. No accent here and no accent here. It doesn't happen with the UI because the UI, these are two strong vowels. They're both going to be UI. They're not going to be, there's no combination that we'll make. Like we have up here, I talked about this one, I. We don't have we like in French. It's oui. So it doesn't need to be separated. So the UI is no accent on those. But the same thing down here with the Y in it. Okay? So that's what they have in common. All these vowel combinations are going to have a Y in between them in the third person, singular and plural. So practiced quite a bit with the yo form and the preterite tense. Now we're going to start practicing quite a bit more with the third person, singular and plural, saying he built or she fell or they read, things like that. All right, ¿qué más? So here's a list of verbs that are going to do this in the preterite tense. Let's just make sure we know what they mean. This is going to be the list of verbs that we work with. There are more of them. In fact, there's a million UIs. But let's just keep it simple right now because we'll eventually be having daily quizzes on these. So caer, to fall. Leer, to read. I'm going to stop writing to get rid of it. Proveer means to provide. Poseer means to own. I always look at this, it kind of looks like possess, like when you possess something, you own it. That's kind of a nice way to remember it. Oír is to hear, not to be confused with escuchar, which means to listen. Huir means to run away or to escape, to flee, those kinds of words. Construir, I've already talked about it, means to construct or to build. It's easy to remember construct because it looks like it. Destruir looks just like what it is, and it's destroy. Influir means to, you can probably guess, influence. And incluir, again, you can probably guess, means to include. So once again, we see a lot of verbs that are cognates, not all that difficult to memorize. Okay? This is a screencast where you may need to go back and take a look at some specific parts of it, particularly this page here that I discussed. You know, it came at you kind of quickly, so this is one you want to watch again. I just don't want it to go over 9 minutes. Okay, muchas gracias por su atención. Next class, we'll discuss these, we'll practice with them, and these will eventually be included on the daily quizzes. Muchas gracias. Nos vemos.